Okay, how is everyone? Nice to see you. Onegaishimasu. So, let's read number 10. Shokushu number 10, the principle of non-dissension. There is no conflict in the absolute universe. Conflict arises only in the relative world. If we are to lead others, we must unify mind and body and practice the principles of the universe. Do not say that this is a world of survival of the fittest, where the stronger prey upon the weaker. The true way of peace is exactly the same as the principle of non-dissension. So tonight we begin a new series, which I've told you about, and that is again known. I call it the sayings of Koichi Sensei in my computer files. It's actually, there are a series of sayings that headquarters Shinichi Sensei has selected from Toi Sensei's writings and teachings. And they are being used, they are being published now in a day-to-day book or a day-by-day book, I think they call it. It's in English and it's in Japanese. And Sayaka Reasoner and I have worked for a while on these with them so that I have access to all of these, both in Japanese and English. And the one tonight is number 1, and it's be happy to throw and be happy to be thrown. And I'd like to ask Sayaka Reasoner to read that in Japanese, please.
投げて喜び、投げられて喜ぶ。
Very nice, thank you. It's kind of brief, but I still like to hear Sayaka read it in Japanese. I think it's very important to hear it in Japanese because that's the way it was originally written. And if you notice, nagate and nage are both used, those words in there. So maybe even when you see it written, I see John has written it down in the chat section if you want to look at it. You almost feel like you can understand it. Because, of course, you can, because you know what the translation is. This is very nice. I want to read you something. The 5th principle of Shinshin Tuitsu Aikido speaks of leading. In Aikido, we always say that if we want to lead, first we must learn to follow. Leading requires that we give our full attention to the other person. The best leader is the best at following. That means the best teacher is simply the best student. I think that's really important in taking in this when we're thinking about this. Be happy and be happy to throw and be happy to be thrown. It looks to me like Koichi Sensei is just encouraging us to be natural and equanimous, or maintain. Keeping one point means keeping a sense of equality or equanimity, of evenness and steadiness. So when we're doing the techniques, as well as everything else, as we know, the techniques are a metaphor for everything that we do in daily life. So learning to how to treat others in this metaphorical style is very important. For instance, well, before we do anything more, I'd like to do a little breathing, just so we all have a chance to be very calm. So let's sit for a little while. Okay, that's better. So when we have happiness, when being thrown and when throwing, that must mean everything is going very smoothly and harmoniously, and there's nothing but connection between the two of you, right? You know, so Sri Sensei quite often begins his particularly Western seminars with a handshake. You recall? If you've been to his seminars, you maybe know, or maybe I've done that with you before. And then because that's the simplest, most straightforward way that we connect in the West. When we see someone, we shake their hand. Of course, also maybe in Hawaii, we give them a hug. Or in Japan, maybe bow. Maybe we bow. But the feeling, the connective feeling is the same. And the handshake works very well because the next move is that one of you holds the wrist of the other person. And when that happens, when you're being held and Shinji Sensei asks you to move, the teacher says, see if you can move. Sometimes it's difficult to stay happy. Sometimes it can be very frustrating. Yes, very difficult to move. Because as soon as our mind goes to some part of the equation, like our wrist that's being held, then we're no longer able to move freely. In other words, we no longer have mind-body unification. So we no longer are able to connect with our partner. So when you want to help another person, or even if it's you that's having your wrist held, you don't tell yourself, don't think of your wrist. Because of course, if I tell you don't think about elephants, you will think about elephants. Don't say, don't think about your wrist, because that's all you'll think about. No, instead, we encourage you to extend ki, or in other words, to include the whole room, not just your whole body and your partner's whole body, but the whole room in your awareness, in your field of awareness. Another way of saying extend ki, right? And then everything can move at once, not just my whole body and my wrist, my arm that's being held, but her whole body or whoever is with me. We can move together. And the feeling is that everything in the dojo is free to move and moves in some way in concert with me when I have this sense of being everywhere, of being everything. This is mind-body unification, which obviously Toi Sensei often calls, small self, big self, shoga, taiga unification, same thing. So when we're not happy, it's usually because from the Nage's perspective, we're struggling in some way. We have these three ways of connecting or not connecting, three ways of responding to someone that is freezing us and preventing us from moving. And the first one is always to try to use strength, particularly if we're a strong person like I am. The temptation was always very much to use my power to move the other person. And the problem is that quite often it works, or you think it works because you're able to move the other person. But that's still not what Toi Sensei is talking about. Still not happiness, right? I love that he says to be happy to throw and happy to be thrown. The same thing as enjoy throwing, enjoy being thrown. And on the other hand, the uke quite often Well, maybe it could be timidity. Sometimes they have a hard time committing, but usually, if you think about your own experience with the other person, with the uke, or sometimes your experience, let's let's admit it. Um, as uke, sometimes we tend to try to hold the other person and keep them from moving, right? So is that okay? Are you happy when you're doing this? Of course not. So it's not connected. It, connected means that both sides are following the other. So all of the uke's attention is on the nage, and all of the nage's attention is on the uke. And we're following each other very, very precisely and very carefully, and at the same time, very naturally. So it's a spontaneous, uh, immediate kind of relationship that we have. As long as we're happy and enjoying ourselves. If we have some kind of agenda, like as the most common thing that Toi Sensei would ever say to us is, it looks like you want to throw that person. When we were having a hard time, he'd come over to help us and he'd say, you're trying to throw them, that's the problem. You want to win. So this is kind of our subconscious mind attacking us. When we have a mind to want to be first, to want to be the higher, more developed one, to be the higher ranking, let's say the more respected, the winner, right? And that can be the uke or the nage. Then that we put our that intention, that negativity into the relationship, and then there's no more happiness. So it's all about connecting. Another part of this is recognizing, as nage or as uke, we have the responsibility to recognize the level of development of the other person. Sometimes it's as simple as age. Of course, there might be an injury, and we're usually informed of that right away by the other person who doesn't want to get hurt. Oh, my leg bothered me, I can't do it. Okay, or please don't use this hand, just use this hand, something like that. But more often it's just the level of development of the other person. Maybe the person is a beginner and they haven't learned uke yet, or they haven't learned the nage well yet. So that your responsibility then becomes quite different. It's then to support the other person in happiness, so that the other person can be happy even in learning to move in concert with the other person in the technique. One time we were in Japan one summer for the taigi competition, and a person from another dojo, he was not an elderly person, but he was getting along in years. He and his wife came to see me before the taigi competition, and they said, you know, Sensei, we signed up for the taigi competition, and we want to do it because we really enjoy training together. But there's no way that we can do it in the time that Toi Sensei allots us. I can't get up from uke fast enough to do that, and neither can she. But we just don't move fast enough. What should we do? And I said, well, just set aside the time. Did you want to win the taigi competition? Oh, of course not. We don't want to win. Well, then why are you worried about the time? Winning the taigi competition is for young people, not for people your age. Your job is to go on and demonstrate the joy that you feel when you're training together with dignity. So never mind the time, do it as slowly as you like, but as long as you're enjoying it, then it'll be okay. And of course, they did a very good job and came to see me afterward, and people actually gave them a little applause because we appreciate that maybe even more than the young person that moves with great alacrity and ease. When we see the level of maturity, the level of development of the person that is able to get up and say, and so what? This is what all I have. This is what I can do. So we're talking about being happy as okay, happy as nage. This doesn't just happen with the agile, young, happy people. I saw recently my good friend, Clarence Chin Sensei, who is in his 80s now, taught a seminar recently on the mainland. It was a couple of years ago. And anyway, but there was something on Facebook, I think, where they showed him teaching Munetsuki Kote Oroshi. And I saw him moving, and it was so beautiful, the way he moves. You know, he's a very, very graceful person. But it was like slow motion. He was moving like this. It was so wonderful. I just have to say I enjoyed it so much because I saw that that's how, and I'm not 80 yet, but I'm getting really close to that. So I know how difficult it is, how different it is to move when your body becomes more stiff, which naturally does as you get older. And it takes on a little bit of different, different shape and different dimension, so that you move differently. And so this business of recognizing in the other person also is very, very important. What is the uke's ability? Move accordingly. What is the nage's ability? Attack and follow accordingly. So this is the meaning of this. I think it's very beautiful, and it says a lot to us about how foolish it is for us to adopt sometimes the attitudes that we adopt when we're on the mat in the dojo. Sometimes it looks like we want to win. And really, we're just doing it for the sheer joy and beauty of connecting with another person physically, emotionally, mentally, all together. Okay, so that's what I have to say about that. Now, our monitor tonight is John Hara. There, John, and he will now move you to your discussion groups. Thank you very much. I'll see you in 20 minutes.
Hi, thank you.
Yeah, so I was in group 2. I was asked to be the speaker for the group. In the group was Melly Stokesbury Sensei, Andre, and Charlotta, and myself. And we had a very interesting discussion. There are many possible questions that come out of this discussion. But one of the things that came up, well, I'll give you a few examples, and then maybe you can comment, Sensei, was how easy it is to fight, to get into fighting on the mat, and I would add off the mat, and even that there may be some satisfaction to fighting. Yeah. So this was brought up in our discussion. And there was also, interestingly enough, the idea that there's, when we're training, there can be advantages and disadvantages, perceived advantages and disadvantages. And yet, maybe we're not seeing everything when we feel like we're at a disadvantage. Maybe it can be turned into, that position can be seen as an advantage in some way. And the other thing that came up was that, it can be quite fun to move physically on the mat and to enjoy rolling around and throwing each other. And yet once you take the physicality away and you get off the mat, maybe some of the joy of the interaction, of the connection becomes, I don't know, lost, or it's difficult to carry off of the mat. And maybe because we're approaching it in the wrong way. So those are the kind of comments that came up. The satisfaction of fighting.
Yeah.
Being one of them.
Okay. Thank you very much. This is very interesting. You know, when I was a little boy, we used to play fighting, as many young boys and girls do. And we really enjoyed it. And you know, we actually played war with rocks, throwing rocks at each other, and loved it, right? Even though there was great danger and the parents didn't know we were doing it, of course. And we would get hit with the rocks and get bruises and sometimes bloody. And yet we never thought, oh, let's not do this. This is not a good idea. No, because it was too much fun. And you know why it was so much fun? Because we had an opportunity to test ourselves. Now that, of course, we all understand that about young people, is they get off on testing themselves because they're trying to see where they're at, what kind of prowess they have. It's all about winning, of course, all about winning and losing, because that's what we're taught. That's why I read The Spirit of Non-Dissension to begin this session. And I didn't really get into that because there wasn't time. But the fundamental difficulty that we have with each other on the mat, never mind off the mat now for the moment, just on the mat, that the reason we have difficulty learning to coordinate ourselves with each other is because we have vestiges of this testiness, of the thrill of competition. You know, I've been in the dojo teaching a seminar when the thrill of the competition got so intense that people were being hurt. I had to stop the seminar and start again. It just takes an instant. Because the people that were involved in this seminar didn't realize that that's what they were getting off on, that's what the fun was. When I first said, you guys better be careful, somebody's gonna get hurt, they said, oh, but we're having so much fun. Yes, you are having so much fun as you compete with each other and as you try to best each other. So there's that element of competition. And somebody asked me recently at one of these things, isn't there such a thing as good competition? Well, I've been searching for it all my life. I've never found it. It's like Toy Sensei says, don't believe that this is a dog-eat-dog world where only the fittest survive. But that is in fact what everyone believes in this world. And so it's very, very difficult for people to understand, what are we talking about when we talk about non-dissension? Like, you know, look at the state of our country. The two political parties are tearing each other to shreds, getting off on it. Both sides, okay? So both of them feel that it's the other side that's the problem, but it's always us that's the problem. It's never the other side. Because I only say that because we can't do anything about the other side. So we can only do something about ourselves. So when we're in this situation, the dojo, So we have an obligation to our partner. Suzuki Sensei used to call it, you polish me, I polish you. You polish me, I polish you. That's the feeling that you want to have with each other. And that's what brings out the true joy of freedom from competition, freedom from needing to best the other person. So this is the very essence of Toi Sensei's teachings right here. So very, very important. I think that's why he picked this as the first of his sayings, or maybe he didn't pick it, but Shinichi Sensei certainly did. Okay, next, please. Thank you, Carlos.
Thank you, Sensei.
Group 1, if you can go on next.
Hello, Sensei.
Hello, Jack.
I was in group 1 with Tracy Riesner Sensei, Jan, and Alexei from Moscow. We wanted to ask, we kind of came up with what is an appropriate way to respond when your partner is, you know, visibly unhappy or like noticeably unhappy or uncooperative or, you know.
Yeah, okay, well, I think we just, we did probably just answer your question, but
yeah,
the way to, what to do when someone is being unhappy is to make them happy by being happy yourself. In other words, if whatever you want to see in the other person, that's what you are. You have to be what you want to train with. You cannot fix. We cannot fix another person. You cannot change another person. You cannot make another person be happy. You can only be positive, be plus, be happy, support them. As soon as they feel that from you, things are going to change.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, I could go on and on, I suppose, about that in terms of the philosophy of it, but it's the doing of it. So when we're on the mat, and we hope that we're going to be able to get back on the mat one time in the near future, but when we're on the mat again, and just if you'll just think back to the other times you're on the mat, imagine this. You can practice this in your imagination. Put somebody over there that's doing whatever you can think of that you wouldn't like. And imagine, let that affect your emotions. And then when you're feeling that obstinate, that competitive emotion that you feel, which is what you're describing, when somebody doesn't like what somebody else is doing, what that's doing to you is bringing out your, I want to win. I want to beat over, I want to defeat this person. I want to, so if you have that kind of idea, you're not happy. And they're not going to feel happy no matter what you try to do. So put yourself in that situation and practice it. And you know, I have given you exercises, key exercises that you can practice when you're sitting with a friend talking. Yeah, maybe everybody doesn't get to get in groups right now, but maybe you're just with one friend. You have someone in your family. Maybe you're with 2 or 3 people in your family. And practice those exercises that I gave you, because it will bring this stuff up in you, and you can see, how is it? How do I? Then you can notice that you're not able to be happy. You're not able to be positive. A plus mind you're not able to have when these things are arising in you. So then it brings us right back home, in other words. So we're not so much thinking about what to do about that other guy that's not doing it right. That's never the question. The question is always, what do I do with myself when I feel someone else is acting like that? Okay? Okay, Jack?
Okay, thank you, Sensei.
Group
Next,
3.
please.
Aloha Sensei.
Aloha.
Group 3, we had Lynn Curtis Sensei, Linda Sasaki Sensei, Vitali, and Lucky and Rose Friend. There were some common themes about difficulties with fully committing as an uke, trusting ourselves to take the fall fully, and trusting our partner. And also how to teach others and other students if we're teaching, how to do that as well. And so our question was, how can we commit fully as an uke and at the same time, when working with someone who's a beginner or we're not sure how they throw and we're not comfortable committing fully, like they might want to use their physical prowess too much or something, and we don't want to get hurt. So how can we connect these two things that kind of seem like they're conflicting?
Okay, well, yeah, since you bring that up, you do want to be observant and take care, so that if you see somebody that's acting crazy and is not respecting the level of your ability to take uke, then you can say something. But generally speaking, timidity causes accidents. Cautiousness, just like when you're driving a car, I always think of merging in traffic. When you have a yield sign or a merge sign, sometimes on the freeway it's a merge sign. Well, when you're entering onto a freeway, it's a yield sign. So I see people come up to the yield sign and stop and wait for 30 seconds or 45 seconds and before they see a huge opening, and then slowly they get out, and then they stop all the traffic out there, right? So this is timidity, and a person needs to have driving lessons. You find the opening and you merge immediately. So the same thing that happens with uke. If you're not, like Toy Sensei, Shinichi Sensei said the other day in his class, the uke has to break into the space, the ma'ai of the other person. That's what uke is. I love that. It's breaking into, forcefully, moving rapidly into the situation. And then the nage has something that he or she can work with joyfully. So it's moving with joy, of course, but full of ki. So both sides are fully committed, fully connected, and fully joyful in their expression of this. Now, of course, that's an ideal. And what goes wrong to prevent that are all these things we're talking about. And one of them is not realizing that timidity causes accidents. When you're cautious and holding back, when you get thrown, you're going to have a one-point landing instead of move smoothly through it, because you've lost your momentum. You've lost your centrifugal force, and centrifugal force is what the nage is using to move you through the art. So this is very important and I think that's only one of the things you ask about. But again, I do want to emphasize the simplicity of taking responsibility for ourselves. I keep hearing people say, what about when the other person isn't doing it right? And I'm not saying that everybody does it right. They're having the same problem you're having. I'm having the same problem my partner's having. So the way to resolve that is to get together and make friends and address it together. That's what you're doing. You're building relationship on the mat. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about that right now. Thank you, Ilaria.
Thank you, Sensei.
Group 4.
Good evening, Sensei.
Oh, hello.
Hello. So the people in my group are Lillian, Christoph, Roy, and Merche. And our question is, it was kind of answered in the previous parts of the discussion, but it was, what should we do when our partner kind of refuses to connect with us? But this question has already been answered, so.
Well, I'm sorry, but I'm laughing because, this seems to be the theme, not just of tonight, folks, but every time I'm teaching a seminar or a class, that's what I'm dealing with constantly, is helping people get over the fact that they're the ones that are responsibility for their state of mind. The state of your emotional life is your state. It's your emotional life. You don't want to be a slave to everybody that you train with. You are responsible. You are in charge of your development. You are in charge of your state of mind. No one else is affecting that unless you welcome them to affect that in you. And you don't have to do that. You can be free of that. And we're free of that by what we call compassion, or caring about the other person. Instead of judging the other person to be wrong, or doing something incorrectly, or refusing to connect with you, or whatever you can come up with there, instead of that, you support them. Because your state of mind changes when you do something nice for another person. When you're judging the other person to be wrong, you're really not taking responsibility for the fact that you are the center of the universe you are in, right? But when you step out to your surroundings and you support that, then you're the one to be trusted. Then you're the one to be turned to. Then you're the one that we all appreciate and want to train with. And we'll give all of our attention to next time we train together with you. Okay? Thank you very much, Allison.
Thank you, Sensei.
Last group 5.
Hi, Sensei. We're group 5 with
Hello.
Thomas. Hello. Thomas Ziegler from Frankfurt, Susan from Seattle, Phoenix, and myself. Most of the questions have been answered, like judgmental and supporting your partner as a, instead of judging from the very beginning of whether they're doing it correctly or not. But I find our discussions sort of came in a slow path of who would be the initiating interaction with this discussion. So just like Nage or Uke, who will have a discussion, and our discussion, you might say, was I tried to lead, but then the leading didn't come as smooth as, like say you inviting someone to come at you, but they don't react to you, or they don't pay attention to you, to interchange. Would that be still encouraging, keeping yourself happy in doing that?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's all about relationship, isn't it? I mean, what we're doing on the mat is we're learning how to get along with people. That's what we're doing. In very challenging circumstances, of course, we're putting ourselves in a place where one of us is attacking and the other one is dealing with that attack. So the proper way of attacking and the proper way of dealing with that aren't always in perfect sync, right? So we have to see what underlies this. In other words, the apparent attack and reception of that attack and the dealing with that attack. That's apparently what's going on. But underneath all of that is we're learning to respect and support another person that might be doing something as much as either attacking us or throwing us somewhere, both of which can be very objectionable. So we're learning how to deal with conflict as it happens, as it arises in our everyday life. So whenever we're on the mat, that's the real thing that's happening. And all the, just look at what everyone has said during this class about this situation. The question that everybody has is, what do I do with the other guy that's doing it wrong? That's the common question that we all ask all the time. And that's because we're, what do you call, unenlightened. We're looking at life backwards. We're thinking that the way to live is to fix what's wrong outside of us. But that's not the way to live. That's not living. That's not freedom. That's bondage. We need to learn to just take responsibility for our own selves, for our own state of mind, for our own loving kindness. That's the teaching. And so that's what we're practicing. And just we can see how difficult it is because you people are all highly experienced in this. So we know when this is what comes up over and over again, that this is a very, very challenging thing to ask of ourselves, to move beyond that way of blaming the other person for our state of mind. Okay, so thank you very much. I hope always when we have these kind of discussions that everybody can benefit from them. And the best way is, tonight when you sit, or tomorrow morning when you get up and sit, let it really percolate in you. See what you find. Okay? Domo arigatou gozaimasu.
Oh, Sensei, I apologize. One moment. We still have a little bit of time, and I've missed one group. Group number 6.
Okay, sorry.
I apologize, everybody.
Okay.
Hey, we were forgotten. Thank you very much.
That's my fault. My fault.
Yeah, well, being the last, usually your questions are all answered anyway, so it's kind of a moot point here. But we did have a good discussion. I think it's a great subject and very expansive as you get into it. In our group was Celine and Kayomi and Byron and Olaf Schubert Sensei and myself. And we had a very good discussion. Part of it was referring to our training and these issues, how maybe the longer you train, the more familiar you get with the training and the issues of partnership and yourself. And you can become more attentive without thinking about all of these things, these other things that bring you into competitiveness, like, where your hand goes, where your foot goes, the type of person you're training with. So we were talking about that these things don't tend to be as important as you train longer. But there was a question as to the sense that we don't really get rid of this, or do we ever really get rid of our sense of competitiveness, or is it just diminished? And can they both coexist as you are interacting? You might have a little bit of competitiveness and yet have the training that also releases that. And is there a third issue that comes into play that makes this competitiveness not so important, even though it's still there. Can they both coexist?
Okay.
Without attachment?
All right. Thank you. I think the answer to your question is yes, but I wouldn't quite put it that way. Yes, it is always there for the rest of your life. But you know, the story about the two wolves within you, and which one is going to prevail? And the grandfather says, the one you feed is the one that will prevail. That's a very, very, very like what I'm thinking of this, because, you know, I only have myself as and whatever I've observed in other people, but I mean, personally, I only have myself as an example to me. And, you know, what I've learned from my teachers and from my training with other people in this way, I mean, I've been just as competitive as everybody else. In fact, I'd say I'm very strongly competitive, maybe even more than other people in many ways. But it's not a problem as long as I'm not using that, as long as I'm not feeding that. So, and you can't be doing two things at once. So if you're using all of your attention to support other people when you're in the dojo, or even when you're not, if you're using all of your ki to enliven and support and appreciate and love and befriend and support other people, there's just no room. It has no room to operate in you. It's not that it's gone. I can see it there. I know what it is. And I know it's very powerful if I feed it, but I don't feed it. It doesn't mean it doesn't pop up on its own to give me a little test every now and then. But that's good. That keeps me on my toes. Okay?
Thank you, Sensei. Very nice.
I just really love this class tonight, and thank you so much, because I know everyone's really thoughtful, mindful in this regard. This is very personal to all of us because we're on the mat all the time, and we're not only having a chance now to maybe imagine and reflect on the activities that we do when we're in the dojo and on the mat, maybe much more than when we're always on the mat. Maybe during this hiatus, during this period of staying away from the dojo, we have an advantage to see the world and our practice in a different light, in a different way, maybe to see it much more clearly. Anyway, I think that's something, I'll say it again, tonight or tomorrow morning when you're sitting, let that percolate. Let this class bubble in you, and let's see what we get to see. All right? Domo arigatou gozaimashita. Thank you very much.